Welcome to another episode of In the Nude. Today I want to talk about healing and how it's both extremely simple but also completely complex. Let me get what I'm talking about. So the path of how you get to a place of healing that journey, because of the diverse amount of wounds that exist and personalities that exist and all of the different facets, the path on how you get through your journey and to conclusions that you come to can be really vast. Whether you find yourself deeply resonating with nervous system regulation, or you find yourself focused in on attachment theory, or you find yourself deeply invested in attraction, like the theory of attraction, or if you find yourself focused in on it being a religious experience, or you focused in on it being a like holistic nature experience, whether you find yourself to connect with and have more peace on doing things in nature, or if you find yourself to have more peace in doing meditation, and still there's a lot of options, there's a lot of diversity in how and what works well for you. But there's some staples that are fairly simplistic that are always included in the journey. Things like, I refer to it as you have to be willing to look in the mirror. What I mean by that is an innate part, a very uncomfortable but an innate part that's required in the process of healing, is the willingness to look at what is. The willingness to stare yourself in the mirror, look at everything that exists as it is right now, without judgment, without shame, without trying to fix it, and existing with yourself and giving compassion. It's this connective comprehension and receiving of yourself. That's an innate part of, no matter how you go about it, that's going to be at some point a thing that exists in the journey. And it's extremely simple in words, but the complexity and the nuance and the minutia of how you go about doing that, and how long it takes for you, and what parts are obstacles for you, and what things that help you get through that, that is a crazy complex aspect of it. But it's kind of like, we've lived our life, right? Say we're going to tell a story. We got 2 dogs, okay? We have 2 dogs. And you have one dog whose owner is enthralled with this dog. And they sit there and they spend so much time connecting this dog, and they give it treats, and they play with this dog, and they give it commands, right? This dog is enamored and in love with its owner, right? The process of getting rewarded and cared for, it wants so desperately to please its owner that it learns the commands and it does the things because it's from love. Then you have this other dog over here whose owner is terse and angry and shouting commands and punishing them and hurting them. That dog is going to learn how to behave, how to do the actions. But there's only one of those 2 dogs who liked the experience of getting there. There's only one of those 2 dogs who is enjoying their life. We've spent most of our life as the dog that was getting hurt. And as a result of our experience having had that happen, consequences and shame and failures and pointing out where we are not enough, we have embodied and metabolized, like pulled into ourselves. And we then treat ourselves that way. That process can get results of actions, right? It can get you being very productive. It can get you getting stuff done. It can even possibly get you success in business, or success in like some type of like tangible way that somebody else looks at and goes, oh, you've arrived. But you've lived that life, and you know it doesn't get you what you're looking for. What you're longing for in this journey, it isn't just some type of checked box. It isn't some type of, I want to have just this amount of money. The reason you want the money is for the safety. The reason you want the money is for the freedom. The reason you want the money is the experience, the joy, the catharsis, the enjoyment, the connection, the whatever. It's what it represents, right? So this path over here with the hurt and the degrading ourselves and the shaming ourselves, we've lived it. And it can get an action. It can get the tangible behavior. But that behavior isn't what resonates with us. So in order for us to get that life we want to have, we have to be willing to let go of the coping, the tools, the things that we have been doing and have accepted as not fitting, right? And that starts with learning how to see what is, without judgment, without shame, and learning how to sit with ourselves in it, like we would a friend on a bad day. Right? When you have a bad day, you don't want your friend sitting there trying to solve stuff for you. That is not what you need. That's not what your friend needs, right? When somebody comes in and is like, oh, well, you should have, or what about this? Or it escalates the frustration. The same thing is true with yourself. It's okay to just sit with yourself in what is and be like, that was hard. No wonder that you struggle in these things. That makes perfect sense. It's only fitting. Giving yourself that acceptance, that grace, that compassion, as a baseline, that's a thing that's going to be true. Looking in the mirror and being willing to accept what is. The other aspects of healing that are innately in it is when you're in that place and you're feeling your feelings. Again, if you want more information on practically how to do that, there is a previous podcast that goes all through that. But once you are feeling your feelings and you're observing what's there, another step that's included in the healing is the willingness to let go. I'm going to give another example of this because it's just like a quintessential, okay. In the fall, trees have this transition that goes on, right? They have these, during the summer, they have all these beautiful, lush leaves that are helping the tree have life and helping the tree have survival during that season, getting food and getting all of that. But as winter is coming, those leaves are no longer fitting. They're no longer going to serve the purpose. They're going to drain the life from the tree. They no longer work. And so they start to transition. And it's this beautiful riot of color, showing us and reminding us that it can be so beautiful for change to happen and to let go of things, even if it doesn't feel like it. And if you watch that transition from fall to entering winter, and the leaves have changed from the rioting color and they're turning brown and they're falling to the ground. If you see a healthy tree, a tree that's like solid and good and doesn't have any fungus and all of that, do you know what happens? It lets go of all the leaves. It's sitting there bare, stored up and resting. After all that loss, it's stored up and resting. But you know what happens when a tree is sick? It's got a fungus, got something wrong. It holds on to its leaves. It's brown, dead, unserving, unbeneficial leaves. It sits there in the tree. It serves no purpose, and it actively is draining the tree more of life, but the tree can't let it go. The leaves don't let go of the tree. It's the tree's choice to let go. But when it's sick, when it doesn't have the nutrition it needs, when it can't heal itself, it can't let go of the leaves. The same thing is true with humans. So when you're in a place where you aren't being capable of letting go, coming to the table with judgment is like me coming to the tree and saying, "What's wrong with you? You know you should let go of the trees. Just get better." It doesn't work. That tree can't heal itself. It needs someone else to come alongside it. It needs somebody who can see, hey, you've got this fungus. You don't know what that is, but I do. Let me give you something to help you. Let me give you something that can help you heal so you can let go of these leaves. That's a co-regulation. That's a camaraderie that comes around, because sometimes we can't see what we can't see. The tree can't heal itself. And you can't sometimes heal yourself. Sometimes you need a therapist. Sometimes you need a person who comes alongside you and teaches you how to co-regulate. And yes, oh my dear goodness, it would have been great to have been that parent. To have had that parent, I mean. It would be great to have had that parent. Because that's the job of a parent, right? Is part of the deal. A parent is supposed to help you learn how to deal with life, learn how to cope and function, and tell you, hey, in this scenario, these are things you can do, and these are things that are going to hurt you if you do them. But we didn't have that, right? So now we've got to find ways to co-regulate. For me, I found ways to co-regulate with, I am a scavenger of information. My head wrapping around a concept and fully understanding it and having like definitions and tangible things to sink my teeth into, it helps me to comprehend it. There's a level of intellectualization that comes with that. Reading those books, listening to those podcasts, listening to and hearing things. Like there's a level of intellectualization, which is not feeling, but for me, a part of that process, a part of that ability to co-regulate myself, be my own parent and have some objectivity, but also have those same feelings and go through the process and help myself. That intellectualization, that understanding, the comprehension, it helped me. Something else that was really helpful for me is I've gone through a pretty decent amount of therapy, different mediums and different tools. If you have questions about that, I can share what I know in that regard, but there are different facets that you might find helpful. There's different modalities that some people find to be more effective than others, and not every therapist is made equal. I have seen a lot of therapists, and I can say, hands down, out of the over a dozen I've seen, there's only 3 that were a good fit for me and were able to help me. But there is a need often, and it is not a denigration on the tree. The tree didn't cause itself to have a fungus. It was the environment it was placed in, where the seed was planted. It could do nothing with it. It was a seed, not of his own volition, put into an earth that had fungus and growth in it, and it grew there, and there was nothing. It's not the fault of the tree. In the same way, you didn't ask to be put in that family. You didn't ask to be put in that environment. You didn't ask to have those parents. You didn't ask to have that trauma. It's not a denigration for you that you didn't have the help. You didn't have the choice. But a part of it is learning how to let go of the things that aren't working for you. And if you can't do that on your own, that's not a denigration. It just simply means you were never taught. I was never taught. We have to learn it. And sometimes we have to learn it with help. And that is not a bad thing. Think about when you do taxes. Do you go to the IRS and get the paperwork and like fill out the information? Or do you use a tool that helps you? Do you get a tax CPA person to fill out your forms? Do you change your own oil and figure it out by messing around? Or did you get a book? Or did you go to a place and get it? It's the same thing. There's no stigma to it, no matter what somebody else says. The reason they have a stigma is they're not willing to look themselves in the mirror. There's this line that I love, if you're ever feeling like judged by somebody, is, I've never been judged by somebody. I've never been hated on by somebody that I'd want to trade lives with. So the next time somebody says something to you that makes you feel lesser, you can know 2 things. 1, you can ask yourself, would I want to trade places with that person? And 2, if someone is tearing you down, it's more about them than it is you. But back to the tangible things, right? So there's like looking in the mirror. There's this willingness to sit with yourself. There's this willingness to let go. And the last one for me, like a staple, and these of course can have facets or whatever, but like a staple is making the effort to see how you connect with the whole. And that can sound really vague, and there's a lot of aspects to it, but it's things like looking at how you connect with nature and the finite example of the infiniteness that is nature. The way that roots work and trees work and ecosystems work, or the way that, if you believe in God, the way that we connect into who they are, right? Or if you believe in internal divineness, right? The eternal divine. If you believe in Tao, right? It's all the same concept. It's all the same, pulling yourself back to have the humility to see that you are both valuable and important and massively amazing, but you are a piece and a whole. You are both your own entity, but also connected to this vast array. And it's that pull and push, that seemingly contrast of what feels like nothingness and wholeness, of being extremely valuable and worthy, but also just a piece of a whole big process. It's that contrast, it's that like dichotomy that creates this nuanced balance, this ability to come to the table when somebody wrongs you and have the compassion to respond with them, to allow them not to take your power. People often think of anger and assertiveness as strength. But I want to drop a little truth bomb for you. Playfulness is strength. Let me explain. You cannot both feel playful and angry at the same time. They're two different sets of the way your body responds, right? Parasympathetic versus vagal, right? You can't be in the two places at the same time. So if you are playful, you cannot be reactive and angry. You cannot be in your dorsal vagal or parasympathetic, right? It doesn't take strength to be angry. Anger is a secondary emotion. Nothing wrong with anger. Anger is a protective measure. Anger means that you realize that you're worth more than somebody is treating you, but it also is a signal that you've allowed something to affect your personhood that may or may not be necessary. Okay? So when somebody's angry, it's because they feel defensive, they feel hurt, they feel wounded, they feel nicked. And then when somebody responds in anger and lashes out, it means that they didn't have a system in place before that reaction. And they chose to react instead of respond. It takes more strength to be a person who sets the boundary, who sees it cross and calmly decides, you don't get to have my energy. You cross the boundary, this is done. The calm and tranquil ability to have a boundary and to be able to be calm enough to be able to play, that is a much deeper strength than a person who's able to shout and assert. And it is that connective nature of seeing yourself as this beautiful contrast, this like all and nothing, this individual amazing person, but also oneness with so much and so many. It's that truth, that understanding, that coming to a place of calming, that connective to nature, that allows you the strength to not give somebody your anger. When you're responding in anger, the person who did the response, what you're saying is, they get to control me. It doesn't matter what their action is, because you have the choice to react or respond. Reaction is a just split second, whatever comes back out, right? That's you giving yourself your energy. You're just like, you're letting it volley off of you, versus a response where they say the thing, they do the thing, and it is not okay, whatever it is in the situation, right? But when you stop for just a second and make a cognitive choice, you are choosing to retain your energy when you choose to respond. And it's this beautiful process that's like got so many facets, and it's not super simple on how to do it or what works, but it's a part of like the slow munching and crunching of getting to a place where you get to exist in this, no matter what is around you, the chaos and the conflict and the crazy that's all around you. It doesn't have to be something that comes into you. There's this exercise that I love to do, and I call it the bubble, right? You can call it a different ways, you can visualize different ways, but for me, when I'm going to go into a situation and I know that I tend towards being reactive instead of responsive, I sit and I visualize myself inside of essentially like a clear globe, right? Or a bubble. And I sit there in my head and I just like fortify, I paint in, or I like, a fantasy world, like I put this like barrier, this magical barrier between me and the other person. Not because I can't understand where they're coming from, or not because I'm trying to create distance from them necessarily. Sometimes that's true, but not always. But it's because I desire to have the power to decide what comes in. I can decide what I allow in through my barrier. I decide what I come into my bubble. But if somebody decides to volley something at me that I don't want to receive, when I have prepared myself and I've visualized that and I have a word, and it's a word that you don't say on a regular basis, whether it's like, I don't know, Sacagawea, right? It doesn't matter what the word is, just a word you wouldn't say on a regular basis. But in your head, it's a word that you can trigger and say, and somebody who might be with you that cares for you could remind you of it when they start seeing you be reactive instead of responsive. But it's this visual of saying like Sacagawea and pulling that bubble up for yourself so that you, when somebody does something, you can watch it with almost amusement. The more you practice it, it's this fascinating process. I've been doing it for years at this point, and I'm getting better. It's not great all the time, but I've gotten to the place where in a lot of situations I used to react, and now I respond. And when I'm in that place and I have that bubble, that barrier for myself, I can actively see other people. I can see them in their pain, and I have empathy for what's going on and what they're feeling and what they're responding to. But there's almost an amusement, not in like a pleasure way, but in this like curious, like observe, like anthropological way of like watching what's happening in the interaction and seeing the different things that I've learned and it play out. It's almost like it's a study of psychology and process, and that's why it's intriguing. But it's amazing ability to cultivate for yourself, because then you can take that zen, that peace, that like wholeness that you are, that sometimes you don't feel like you are, but you are, and it's metabolized and taken with you no matter the circumstance. And that is a powerful place. It is a powerful place that you are, I can't wait for you to get to that place where you experience that, just even for the first second that it happens, because it makes you feel so satisfied to know that the efforts and energy you're putting forth in this journey, this life that you're trying to build for yourself, that it's working. It's beautiful. The process of you getting towards the life you want. The baseline foundational pieces are fairly simple. The ways you go about getting there, the ways you like cultivate and dig out and find your wounds and how you heal them, that is like fascinatingly vast and broad and so diverse on purpose. It's a beautiful diversity because we're all so different. And sometimes it can be frustrating because it can feel like, well, what do I do? But part of figuring out what works for you is a part of the journey. It's like getting to know somebody, right? You go on dates, you ask questions, you try things out. Oh, did you like this? Oh, I liked this. How did this work? You're dating yourself. You're getting to know yourself. You're sitting and being quiet and being like, hey, you feel a little tense right now. What sounds good to you? And sitting with it. Or trying out something. Be like, you know what? Maybe I'll try going outside. Maybe I'll try a bath. Maybe I'll try doing my hair or putting on some music. It's the exploration. It may sound so frustrating because your past experience has been so focused on the behavior. We live in the society of do, of hustle, of behavior, but we have lived that life. It isn't a checklist. You don't want your life to be a checklist. That's why you're doing this. Stop going back to the checklist. Stop going back to wanting to have 1 + 1 = 2. I get it. All too, I get that. And have grace for when that happens, when you go back to it. But when you go back to it, remind yourself, I don't want to be the hurt dog just taking the actions because I know that if I don't, there's punishment. You want to be the dog that has joy and love, and that you're taking the actions and getting those results because you are enjoying the process, enjoying your life. That is what we're going after. You are brave and amazing and strong to have lived through everything you've lived for and still want to go after more and to care for yourself enough that you say, that isn't enough for me. That life that I've had before, it is enough. I don't want that. To say that behavior, I'm angry about it because I care about myself, to know that isn't okay. To say I want to love myself because in so saying, I want to love myself. You already do, because you're striving after something more for yourself. That is loving you.